Well, the top of the morning to both our viewers, and I'm happy to say that in the sunshine streaming in his window sits Pat McArt. How are you this morning, Pat?
I'm grand, Jude. It's a lovely morning here, actually. I wonder all the people who are gathering in Mayo to meet President Biden. Will they have know the people who were standing out in Carlingford the other night? I felt sorry for them.
Uh,
4 or 5 hours standing in rain and biting cold.
yeah, it's a very interesting thing that. Have you ever stood out watching to see somebody pass by in a car?
Oh, no, not in the least. I've
I
no
have never
interest in
done
doing
that.
it either.
Now, supposing
Uh,
Joe Biden was going to drive through Derry
uh,
in the same kind of cavalcade, would you join the crowds?
no,
Neither would I. Neither would I.
no,
And
no.
I said, I remember John F. Kennedy, and I said to my wife, I remember that day, and in fact, I was in Dublin, and I left Dublin to come up north, so I didn't
Yeah,
even wait around, and I watched the thing on TV. I've never
yeah,
felt the slightest desire. Remember when the Pope came
yeah.
to Ireland? The world and his mother flooded down there. I didn't get it.
I
What
didn't
is it
go
with
either.
people?
No, I don't know. I don't get that. I really don't. You know, this sort of thing sitting around for somebody to see 4 and 5 hours to see somebody who was back
Yeah.
by past you in about 3 seconds.
Yeah,
I
I think
never
it'd be
got
different.
the
It'd be different, wouldn't it, if it was a concert by Bob Dylan or John Prine or something,
yeah. So
where you'd see them practicing their art and you'd watch it. But this thing
uh,
of, I get a
yeah, but
glimpse of the back of
right,
his head.
imagine Jude on what was Wednesday evening on Carlingford, standing out for at least 4 hours, and then the cavalcade drives past you, and you're freezing, you're soaked
Yeah.
to the skin. And does that make it? I suppose that the only thing you can say, I was there the day Joe Biden came to Carlingford. Big deal.
Nobody would want to hear you. Oh, shut up, Grandpa.
I'll shut up. Who cares?
Yeah, but the people seem to really enjoy it. They really
Yeah,
do seem to be thrilled to bits to be out in the street and to see him and
yeah,
cheer him on.
yeah.
But anyway, good luck to him, and I suppose it does. If you had empty streets, it wouldn't look so hot, would it?
What looks
Um,
exactly?
well, now there's much of a loving going across the border. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about Biden. See the way I touch my lips, the way Biden does there.
Yeah, I saw him do that last night
Uh,
several times.
that's old man drool he's trying to stop. Anyway, what about Rishi Sunak not being his best mate exactly? How would you see that as being the case?
There's something distinctly odd about that. Yeah, and they can downplay it or reshape it and hammer it into a different thing as much as they like. But here's the president of America lands on British territory, and the prime minister of Britain meets him at the plane, has a week, whatever it is, 10 minutes, disappears, has a cup of coffee, the next morning, and disappears, and that's it. Now, who decided this was going to be Britain's role, or whatever? Dude, I feel no years ago. I had gone to Germany, and our friend Angela Merkel had been there. You can bet your life she would have accompanied him. I say he was making a sort of stage speech somewhere. She would have been sitting beside him, possibly introduced him, and whatever, which is what the normal format. This didn't happen this time, and there
Why? Why,
definitely seems
Pat?
like
Why do you
I
think that was?
really don't. No, you're right here. I have an idea. I've got a theory. I genuinely think I read some time ago, Jude, that Biden as the country. I'm going to say something. Biden's not the biggest fan of this whole thing
So he
of this whole
does
British.
hit Britain.
No, no, but he's not going to bow and scrape the way that I think the Brits want them to. Uh, well, no, one of his big advisors said that Britain post Brexit is not a big player on the world stage. That Biden is very concerned about keeping, things like the EU on board, keeping NATO on board, keeping America's role in the world on board, and so on. And he basically and of course, Jude should probably stick with us as well. His cultural background is he is very proud to be Irish, and you actually can see, no, you can see he's genuinely happy to be in Ireland in the Republic anyway. He's really relaxed. He's stopping, chatting to people. You can see in the north he was in and out like a shot.
Well, I don't know. I think that could be exaggerated too, Pat. No, it's
I'm
true.
not disputing that.
Sunak didn't play much of a part. I mean, I gather he met him at the airport. I don't think I even saw that. But he did look uncomfortable, that sort of sitting around the sort of bare cafe table and having a cup of
Yeah,
coffee and then clearing off before a major speech. Really sort of daft. So the question is, who decided that? Which side decided that? I have a
yeah,
notion both sides decided that. I think Rishi Sunak um, really isn't too much in love with Northern Ireland or the DUP, and I think that was one way of displaying it. Um,
yeah.
Now I could be wrong, but I think he certainly doesn't care much about the North. And I'm just wondering if there is a link between that and what happened between him and Biden. The other thing, of course, is that Biden, in a way, might be giving him a rap over the knuckles to say, why the hell didn't you sort this out in Stormont? I was going to be addressing the Stormont and we're
Yeah,
going to really be celebrating the Good Friday Agreement, and you didn't do
that,
it.
and that's in the back of my head. That's the whole thing. He was supposed to come to the north. The north was supposed to be the central plank of the whole visit.
Yeah.
He was going to do Stormont. He was going to do various. He celebrate the Good Friday Agreement. He was going to meet the great and the good, and then suddenly, the last minute, well, this last couple of weeks, you knew there was even talk on RT about a week ago, 10 days ago, that he would meet the politicians at Stormont, even though Stormont wasn't sitting.
Mm-hmm.
That all was downplayed. Even there was a guy on from Dundalk said he only heard on a Sunday that Biden was coming to his place on the Wednesday. So there are a lot of things that were changed at the very last minute, and I think you could have hit the nail on the head there. That basically they are pissed off with what the Americans. Uh, by the way, the Americans consider their role. They're the third guarantor. They consider themselves as a Good Friday Agreement. They sent over George Mitchell, who's spent what was it 700 and something 20 days or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton went against the Brits and gave visas to Jerry Adams and Martin McGuinness and Joe Cahill to come to America.
Yep.
They regard their role as central to the Good Friday Agreement.
And it was.
And as a democratic president who facilitated all that, so they have a sort of paternal interest in this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think maybe Biden sitting saying, "I should have been glorying in this, and it's
Yep.
not happening."
Yeah. I quite agree. Overall, now let's take. Well, I must say before we leave the north, I thought they said like it was in and out like a shot, and in one way it was. But I mean, after his speech, I was wondering, do politicians do this? Because I've seen this before. You think the show's over, and then he starts chatting to people and getting his selfies and so on, and it looked unhurried as he mingled with the people who were at that event,
Yeah.
Monica McWilliams and all the rest. He was chatting to them all, and he was, I'll take the selfie, and it showed you him taking the selfie. There was a sense of a lack of hurrying there, but certainly in terms of Sunak not been there, I mean, it really, yeah, it's hard to believe that he wasn't a bit cheesed off with them. What
Jude,
about overall?
let's be honest. All we're doing is surmising it and so on. But
Yeah.
there's one fact, and there was something odd about it. That's a fact.
Aye, did look odd, and I think the clear thing is what you said, that normally speaking, the leader of the country, in quotation marks, would accompany the American president wherever he was going while he was in the place, certainly for ceremonial and important events, and he'd probably wave him off at the airport.
Just didn't
Not
happen.
so. What about what did you think of Biden's performance generally, north and south? Did you feel he was good or effective, or were you afraid he was bumbling?
Yeah, the thing, he hasn't made a speech for the ages anywhere. Like, in fact, the speech in last night in the Dáil was very redolent of the one he made in Belfast. It touched on a lot of the same topics and even used a lot of the same phrases. But no, I think in the North, Jude, he was being very, very careful, Jude. But that there's a background that I find fascinating. Arlene Foster set the tone when she said, Joe Biden hates Britain. Sammy Wilson said he was anti-British as far as I remember. I wrote it down. There's a guy, I think he's called Niall Gardner. I had to write it down because he wrote an article in the Times. He was a former advisor, policy advisor to Margaret Thatcher, and he said that Biden had insulted uh, uh, insulted by Britain or the UK by prioritizing Ireland over the UK, and that Biden has also apparently indicated that he will not be attending the coronation. So that's another snub. He's not interested in coming to the coronation, and so on. And of course, last night, do you remember? Biden turned around and said the UK should be doing more to help Ireland, to help the people in the north. And like he said it openly. And I just turned over to ITI News, and it made the lead story, and it says that was direct criticism of the British government by the US president. So, Jude, the Brits do have I think they're feeling Biden's not one of us.
Yeah, and I think they're right too. I mean, I think it's obvious that Joe Biden. There was a lot of talk, the DUP will have to go in because we've got to have them an assembly up and running when they come for the 25th anniversary, and that didn't happen. And I think that I guess he soft pedaled with the DUP. He didn't want to be seen to be getting at them directly. But I think he ultimately would have put the blame on Sunak, and in a way he's right too. There's one thing, Pat, I don't know how you'll feel about this. Do you remember when JFK came? Do you remember him addressing the Oireachtas?
Vaguely. I was 10.
You're only a slip of a lad. Well, I was in my early manhood. I think it might have been my teens. If I was in my 20s, just barely. I watched it. And I remember feeling a slight pang of disappointment. Not because Kennedy wasn't a good speaker. Geez, Kennedy was one good speaker. I mean, some of the speeches he made while he was in Ireland that time were superb. I mean, Joe Biden would never be in the same class. But the little pang I felt was, and this may seem to place me in the Stone Age, was he didn't mention the one thing that matters most in the North and in the South and in Ireland's history for years, decades, generations, centuries. He didn't mention the United Ireland.
Yeah.
Now, surely that was on all our minds. Now, I'm not saying he expected him to. I didn't expect he would. In fact, I wrote a column, and I said he'll talk about a lot of things, but one thing he won't talk about is a border poll or partition. Now, why is that? Is it that might make the unionists annoyed? Is it that only Stone Age thinking goes along those lines? Is it to reduce everything to a border whenever there's much more nuanced things to be talking about?
Yeah. Apparently, I think it was the Irish ambassador went to Kennedy before he came to Ireland, and he mentioned something about and he said he could nearly see a headache coming on Kennedy's face when he said, "Do I have to talk publicly about that?" So obviously they avoided that. If I remember correctly, after Kennedy left Ireland, didn't he meet Macmillan in London?
That's right.
And
That's right.
so he was aware that he would be meeting. It's like like a hot plate. When visitors come here, like Biden has gone probably further than any American politician. He's made it. Judy has made it clear that he's pro-Irish and so on. And yet there is this case since Brexit. Britain was once an influential member of a community of about 500 million people. Britain has left, and it's now on its own, 60 million people, and there's still 420 or 440 million people in the EU. You've got France, you've got Germany, you've got Italy, you've got Spain, a lot of big countries with a lot of influence and so on. And I read the guy whose name escapes me totally. I have an advisor to Biden for some years, said Britain is no longer a major player on the world, and it doesn't, So maybe Biden's just sort of saying, I don't need to play the old silly, this Brit thing too, Jude, they keep saying about the special relationship. The people who keep saying about the special relationship are the Brits. I rarely hear an American politician say
it. It actually is a delusion, and sometimes the Yanks support them in that delusion. But
yeah, I know
everybody
like
knows they don't have a special relationship at all. You don't. You have a special relationship with people that are going to be advantageous. And the fact
Yeah.
is, like Joe Biden is here, and yes, he has good warmth. Yes, he has family roots and all the rest here. But at the same time, all those photographs, all those newsreel footage, those will be handy going into the election, or just keeping reminding people that Joe is Irish, and that, a lot of people are very affectionate in the States towards the Irish, regardless of whether they're Irish themselves or not. So it was for Joe's advantage to come. But I bring it back again, Pat. Sorry if you're doing this, but I'm going to bring it back again. Why is it that Joe Biden, run all the way back to John F. Kennedy, when people talk about Ireland, they talk about it ambiguously. For a start, they talk about Ireland, and what they really mean is the 26 counties. Or they don't talk about, the fact that Ireland is partition. Now, there's no denying, whether we want it or not, that has been the big bone of contention, which a lot of people lost their lives over for the last 50 years. And yet it's not mentioned, not even mentioned. And as I say, you might say, oh, well, we don't talk about it now because the Unionists, DUP and so on are feeling very sensitive. And it's so recently after the Troubles, and there's people who have lost loved ones or still suffering. True. So then I'm saying, why didn't JFK mention it then? There's, I don't know. It's actually, I think history, when we look back with history, if they look at this, they'll say, that was sort of crazy. The one big elephant in the room, they pretended it wasn't there.
Yeah, but it's a hot potato. And look at the reaction of Biden. And
why should it be hot, Pat? Why should it be hot?
Excuse me, hold on a minute. Look at Arlene Foster, calling him anti-British.
Yeah.
No, she didn't. Much stronger. He hates Britain.
Hates the British, yeah.
Right. By the way, we should discuss those sort of statements. But anyway, let's stick to. Sammy said he was anti-British, and Sammy was on The World at One. And was given he was allowed to get away with that one, with very little interruption.
Yeah.
And so on. So where's the meat and potatoes for American president and getting involved in an argument over here that's going to get him bad publicity and possibly get his opponents back in the States will use again that he's a clodhopper, that he puts his feet in things when he comes over, that he made another gaffe and insulted. Why
would it be an insult to say, I believe in a united Ireland?
That would be the direct interference in another country.
Well, you still could see it. I mean, for example, he didn't take off the DUP, but he said, "I was not for me to tell you what to do, but I really would like to see you that assembly up and running." Now, could you not say the same thing? Now, you may not, of course, agree with me. You may have a different political perspective on this, but I think a united Ireland would be a desirable thing. What's so terrible about that?
No. You're not comparing apples with apples there. One to see the Stormont up and running again as an aspiration that most people, even a lot of unionists, would like to see up and running and so on. But a united Ireland is a very different thing. That is a political. That is, well, to use your term, people have fought for it. People have died for it. There's been a 30-year war about it. It's not something that you would say lightly when you're coming visiting as the president of the United States to a part of that very disputed territory.
I come back to the fact that JFK did the same thing, or failed to do the same thing. And there was no blood in the streets then.
The Americans and the Brits had just fought the Second World War, and there was a kinship there, and they all it come back then, and a man whose father or grandfather had only gone to America a couple of years. He wasn't going to upset any apple cart either. There was a context for of the time that he was speaking in.
Well, you see, I tell you what I'm thinking is this. Like Joe Biden, I wouldn't, if I was talking to people, I would think carefully to see where were these people likely to be unionist in mind, or even were they nationalists who were SDLP nationalists who were opposed to any sort of question of rushing a border poll. I would think twice before I'd even mention it, or to say I'm in favour of United Ireland. Although I'd say a lot of people would know that I am.
Yeah.
There's something weird. There's something not good, not healthy. That, for example, Arlene, Sammy, whoever, they've no problem with them saying, I believe in the integrity of the UK. And nobody says, oh, you bigot. If they just keep it in those terms, we say, yeah, well, that's your choice. But we do, if I was to say, if Mary Lou was to say even, or Pierce Doherty, or you were to say it, you'd be saying, oh, you're stirring the pot. You're getting people upset. Why
Well,
did you have to
yeah.
drag that into it? I don't, that strikes me as crazy.
I mean, you just let's like when I listened, and Arlene made her comment. I think it was on Monday that
Yeah.
Joe Biden hits the UK.
Yeah.
I thought, here we go. By the way, I think it reflects more on Arlene than it
Oh,
does on Joe Biden.
for sure.
And
For
and and,
sure.
and here was another example. Do you remember who was the guy who wrote the book How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yeah.
I would
I've
send
forgotten his
I
name
would
now,
send
but I
Arlene a
know.
copy of it baked.
Uh,
Because the unions seem to have this penchant, as they say, for always shooting themselves in the foot.
uh,
You
uh,
know, here's the most powerful man on earth politically. He is massive. What would you say? Sway in world events, and you don't have to insult him. You don't have to agree with what he says, but they say, come out. By the way, what does it say about Arlene? This is a woman, by the way, who said the St. Patrick's Day celebrations in the White House were too green. Did she think they should be orange? Did she think they should be red, white, and blue? Like I said, it's the patron saint of Ireland, not
uh,
the patron saint of Northern Ireland, not the patron saint of Britain.
uh,
No, it's like saying maybe the 12th of July should be less orange or less loyalist. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm ranting here. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I agree with you completely. Although I still would come back to Paisley's famous explanation of a speech at the Oxford Union. That when these people say these things, they're thinking how that'll play politically to a certain segment, probably their
Yeah.
supporters. And do you think there'd be any hardline unionists who wouldn't say, good woman yourself, Arlene, good for you. Of course he hates us.
Aye,
Or
yeah,
Sammy saying whatever he's
and
saying.
that plays brilliantly in that audience. But each time they say that, they're one on friend, like all they're doing is playing to a diminishing audience.
That's
They're losing
correct.
friends, losing friends and influence every which way. And
Yeah.
by the way, reverting to Sunak again, that I get a distinct impression Sunak needs a big one. And Joe Biden has dangled it several times, and several people. But if they get these things up and running, and the Good Friday Agreement is looked after, there's a trade deal available to Britain with America, which will be very, very advantageous to Britain. And it'll be a big one for Rishi Sunak, which he can flaunt at the next election. I've done a trade deal with Brexit. I've sort of almost sort of Phoenix like taking Brexit back up from the ashes, and we're back trading on the world stage again.
Mhm, mhm,
Dude, that's awaiting Richie Sunak.
mhm.
But right now, it's not happening. And basically, they've made it clear that until the North sort out, there will be no trade deal.
That's true. That's true. Although I do think the trade deal might take I mean, a trade deal between the UK and the US would probably take a number of years, maybe.
Yeah,
Whereas
but
the notion of bringing in big companies to the north here could happen overnight almost. Because all you have to do is get the assembly going, and bingo, these guys can come, and they won't be hanging around, wondering will they, won't they? They'll be jumping into opportunity because it's an opportunity that gives them access to the EU and the UK at the same time. I'm telling you, the
uh,
North really
by
could
the
be a
way, Jude, I
place.
didn't realize there were as many American companies in the North as there are.
Well, I didn't either. Well, there's always been DuPont and things like that,
Yeah.
But I guess there are more than
I
that.
think Biden mentioned something like 200 companies in the North.
Uh,
Geez, I thought that's amazing.
that does seem a lot, all right. And
Yeah.
don't forget, of course, that
Well, moment of correction, but he
well,
said
yeah,
at the
yeah.
time I was
I
sort of
really don't know. He did say something about the number here and how it had increased since the Good Friday
yeah,
Agreement and how it could increase so much more, which is fair
yeah.
enough. But at the same time, you see, the economy here is terribly dependent on the public sector. There are far,
Yeah,
far more people working in the public sector here than in any other part of the UK, or I'm sure in the South as well.
yeah,
So, there's loads of room for getting them off the books of the public purse and onto the
yeah,
books
yeah.
of private companies. Anyway, I really hope it works out. My guess is, and I suppose, well, maybe you can tell me whether you agree or not, is that they'll wait till after, DUP will wait till after this local elections in a few weeks'
Yeah.
time, and then they'll, after a pregnant pause to about September, they'll probably go back in then. Would that seem reasonable to you, or?
Yeah, I'd say so. Well, they'll definitely wait till after the local government election. By the way, the advisory group that was set up,
Oh, yeah.
apparently they have given their report to
Yeah.
Sir Jeffrey.
Aye,
So
aye.
I don't know if they, um, why hasn't there been any discussion of that?
Well, they're waiting till
I would love to. By the
after
way,
the
I would love to
local
know if
elections.
they
They
have
can't.
suggested he goes. If they have suggested he go back in, I take it he's not going to make that public until after the
Yeah,
election.
yeah, exactly. And uh, again, if the committee or the group say you should go back in, they can then say, well, we're just following the recommendations of the people who have advised
Yeah,
us. It's not really us in a way. Anyway, maybe we've talked enough about Biden's visit. Overall, I must say,
yeah, it's enough.
I feel it was successful, sort of surprisingly successful in ways, and he hasn't engaged in any major gaps. I wish to God he would stop that sort of running thing that he does, though. That little
Yeah,
shuffle. And I see where Joseph Kennedy has also developed that little shuffle. He went on
yeah,
towards the podium and some did the same thing. Um, what about Joe Kennedy, by the way, before we leave it? Were you impressed by him?
yeah. Another thing struck me most? He's he's tall, he's red haired, and he's got an Irish face. He's
Hmm.
the sort of guy you could meet somewhere up about southwest Donegal or
Oh,
along the western seaboard. Jesus,
hmm.
the genes have definitely come out in him.
They
He's the
have.
sort of guy you could meet anywhere in Ireland.
Yeah, well, I think that what would be his great uncle, would JFK be his great uncle,
Yeah,
and his grandfather, they were two really good looking guys. I always thought.
yeah,
Really good looking.
yeah,
I think he's pretty nice looking, yeah, and a fine head of hair too, damn him. But
yeah,
when he speaks, I get worried. He doesn't sound. He comes out in spurts. Um, in a way, he's a wee bit like I think Michelle O'Neill was somewhat at the beginning of her tenure.
yeah,
Michelle O'Neill, incidentally, in the few interviews she's done with relation to this, she was masterful. I don't know how you think, but
absolutely. Yeah,
I just thought she really was a real
yeah.
stateswoman.
Yeah,
Um,
no, she was asked directly about the Ireland remark, and she could have gone for it. She says, "I'm here to be positive. I'm not going to get involved in that." I like what Biden had to say, and he's telling us there's jobs galore, investment galore, and
uh,
that's what I'm aiming for. I thought it was brilliant.
Very sensible, very sensible, and she looks good too. She looks good, and she's got the pace, and you get the feeling she's really on top of her brief. Um,
Yeah,
Anything left to say about Biden then? We're glad he's come and he's going to Mayo and he's got them all excited and he knows a wee bit of Irish. Tame
uh,
Sawalya. And oh yes, we're running short of time. Do we want to move on
we
to
better move
another?
on.
Will we move on to another topic?
We better
Um,
move on.
yeah, I can't see Pat. So y'all have to go by you. I can't, for one reason or another, I can't see the time that's left. So maybe you keep the eye on things at your end. Um,
We have less than 7 minutes and 20 seconds.
Aye. Well, there was a number of things in the papers today. There was an article by Justine McCarthy in the Irish Times, and she was giving out about the fact that this investigation that's being done in the south
Yeah,
into religious orders schools in the light of the was it Black Rock?
the Spiritan Fathers, the
Aye,
former Holy Ghost
what used to be the
Fathers.
Holy Ghost Fathers, and she's saying, this is not smart that you're saying only the Catholic clergy were the people who were doing any abusing. It couldn't have happened in Protestant schools, and it couldn't have happened in national schools where you might have had just lay teachers teaching. Does that seem to you to make sense, Pat, or is it just her effort to get?
She raised the point what's the difference between abuse of a Catholic schoolboy or a Protestant schoolboy? And as a point, Jude, it looks like the terms of reference to this inquiry are aimed specifically at Catholic schools,
Oh
and
yeah.
then even more specifically the Holy Ghost Fathers. Now,
Uh,
Jude,
does
I
that
would
seem
take it.
reasonable?
Uh, no, it's not, Jude, not at all. If you went to school, no matter where you went to school, surely it should be those who were abused. Please come forward and make your statements and so on. And we, as a country, will examine those claims and see what we can do about it. To just say, because they're now by the way, the whole thing started at there was a documentary on one RT Radio One on a Saturday, and it was about the abuse at Blackrock College,
Yeah.
and that's where this all originated.
Uh,
Jude, I don't think you can turn around and just say we're sticking to the terms of reference to those specific schools. And by the way, if you went to a Protestant school and you were abused, hard luck, you're not covered in this one.
but Pat, there's a school of thought, and I know because I was ticked off by a number of Protestant clergymen after a TV event. I think I told you. A school of thought that thinks that this thing is rooted in celibacy. I mean, that's the thinking behind that. These are run
Yeah,
by religious orders and therefore
yeah,
suspect because these guys are celibate, and that the desire to
yeah.
sort of have a sexual life emerges in their abuse of children. Does that seem to you a convincing argument, or?
Well, I've always thought that there's something, Jude, if you're a heterosexual or a homosexual or whatever, everybody has a need of, I presume, some sort of sexual needs throughout their life somewhere. And to sort of sublimate that and sort of say, no, no, I'm not, does strike me as a bit odd. But by the way, Jude, just now that you mention it, there was a real controversy this week. The Dalai Lama. Did you see that?
Oh yes, I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw
yeah.
that. Jeez.
Uh, uh,
Tell our
no,
viewers what happened.
no, in fairness, they're sort of saying he's an 80-year-old man. It was a bit of fun and whatever.
But
But
why?
he kissed the wee fella. He was on the lips apparently, and then asked him, to sort of suck his tongue. It was now he said it was a joke and a bit of fun, and so on. But the implications didn't look good.
The kid did ask for a hug first of all,
Uh,
and I gave him a hug, and then he kissed him in the cheek, and then he kissed him in the mouth, and then he said, "Suck my tongue." Uh, it's very hard to know. Different
uh,
countries have different sort of attitudes to these things.
uh,
But it does seem that the Dalai Lama has sort of a bit of a blunder. Yeah, it clearly wasn't, if you stop to think about it, the man was 87, is 87 or something. It's unlikely he
uh,
was planning to, abuse the
exactly. And
child.
Judy, it was in full public view. So
Yeah.
but I guess I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Aye.
Whether he deserves the benefit of it is another matter. But
That's another matter.
I don't
Yeah.
think there was anything totally untoward. Now, had he done this behind closed doors and we found out, I would have said, "Ray, oh, wait a minute."
Yeah. Okay, but we've just about 3 minutes left. Let me come back in a roundabout way to Joe Biden again. Joe was talking about the ties between our two countries, presumably speaking about the southern state, and the United States. Um, is there a danger in that? I mean,
What
is
do you
there a
mean?
danger to Ireland's neutrality? I mean, Leo spoke in such glowing terms about, how much we appreciated them and how we thought politically similarly, and we were, in favour of democracy and so on. Is there a danger that Ireland is being nudged, the south of Ireland is being nudged towards military engagement?
Well, you're going on a fine line here. Apparently, Ireland has given 180 million non-military aid to Ukraine so far. 180 million is quite substantial. We have about
Non-military,
80,000
non-military.
non-military. Sorry, did I say
Well, that,
military?
yeah.
No, non-military aid, and there's 80,000 Ukrainians embedded somewhere in Ireland and so on. But Jude, I think really what we're saying all the time, Biden said Ireland might be neutral militarily, but Ireland is not neutral when it comes to human rights
Mm,
and
mm,
and and, and defense of democracy, as he put it.
yeah.
So, Jude, we keep saying, Jude, let's be honest, our contribution to any military campaign would be limited. We don't really have any air force. We have a couple of ships. I think our army is way below deployment levels.
Yeah.
As we have, a couple of battalions, and that's about it. and that I can't see us making. So I think we will, out of not out of maybe even ideology or whatever, we will stay what do you call it, neutral, because
Mm.
we're not big enough to do anything else.
Yeah. Well, I think I wouldn't think about it that way. I think on moral grounds.
No, I know, but that's
I
the
think we
reality of
should
it
be
too.
leading the world. I mean, the South should be leading the world in terms of saying, look, we're totally in favor of condemning bad things that happen, but we don't believe that violence is the answer. That's the message that was preached to us for decades. How come
Yeah.
these people can't pick that up for themselves in the US
By
or
the way,
UK?
I was being a bit smart. I don't think I think the Irish people would go bananas if there was an attempt made to make us lose our neutral stance. I really genuinely do,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I'd be one of them.
Ah,
Yeah,
you're probably right. Probably right.
yeah,
Okay. Looking forward to your weekend, Pat. Sunshine,
absolutely,
sunbathing
Jude.
in the backyard.
Oh
Davy
yeah,
Sammy Wilson, maybe.
do it, Samuel. Jesus, that would put the neighbours off.
Depopulate a
Right,
corner
Jude.
of the corner of your state. Okay, Pat. Thanks very much.
Bye, Jude.
All the
Good luck.
best.
See you later. We got all the best.